We're going to be in the middle of the third chapter above a comma, and we're now going to engage in a whole series of discussions about the ox. And the ox is the archetypal instrument of damage in the Mishnah because it comes in Torah. And we have a verse, it's in Mishpatim, V'chigof shor ish et shor re'ehu, when a man's ox injures his neighbor's ox, v'meit, and it dies. Umachru et hashor hachai v'chatzu et kaspo. So they sell the live ox and they divide its price. And they also divide the dead animal. So effectively, these two animals have crashed into one another. Okay, one is alive and one is dead, but effectively they liquidate the value of these two animals by turning them into cash, and then they just divide the proceeds. So effectively, they divide assuming that the two oxen were worth the same price at the start. And we're going to see this later in the Mishnah. If the two oxen were worth the same amount of money at the start, they would divide the damage. That's what we call half damages. And then the Mishnah refers to this as an ox which is tam, which is harmless, which is not known to be a dangerous ox. But if the ox is known to be dangerous, or nodaki shor nagahu mitmol shilshom, if it's known that the ox was in the habit of goring from yesterday and the day before, velo yishmerenu ba'alav, and the owner has failed to guard it, then the owner pays full damages. This is the ox which is called mu'ad. Mu'ad means known to be dangerous. So we've got the tam and the mu'ad, the harmless and the known. For harmless ox, we pay half damages or we split the damage. For known danger, the owner is going to pay full damages. And remember, we've learned, by the way, that a human being is always known. Humans always pay full damages, even when they're asleep. They're assumed to be responsible for their actions. But let's jump into the Mishnah now. So we've learned about two humans who are running around in public space and one crashes into the other and who's responsible. So following the two humans, we've now got two oxen. Shnei shivarim tamim shechavlu ze vazeh. Two harmless oxen which hurt one another. So this is a classic case in our pasuk. Mishalmim bamotar chatzi nezek. One pays half damages for the excess. Mishalmim bamutar, they pay for the mutar. And I've translated this as excess, but the classic commentators and the Rosh, actually the Rambam as well, would say, look, we're not talking about a dead and a live ox, which we would just sell in the case in the Torah. We're talking about damage. And maybe these ox are worth different prices, or maybe there's different amounts of damage in one ox or the other. And when we talk about bam mutar, when we're talking about the excess, we're talking about the amount that one ox is damaged over another. So if one ox is damaged to the extent of 60 shekels and the other is damaged to the extent of 100 shekels, well, the excess is 40. So the 40 is what they're going to split, i.e. they're going to net off the damage which is common, but they're going to split the 40. And this is really important in the case of an ox which is known to gore, because if it's known to gore, then of course the owner would have to take all of the 40. Shnehem mu'adim, mishalmim bamutar nezek shalem. If both are known to be dangerous, then the person that's incurred the greater damage actually pays that greater damage in full. Mishalmim bamutar nezek shalem. He pays full damages for the excess. Now, what if one were harmless and the other were known? Echad tam ve'echad muad. So one ox is considered harmless; it hasn't done anything, and the other is muad. It's known to be dangerous. It's caused damage before. We learned already in the Mishnah, if 3 people on 3 separate days give evidence that this ox is dangerous, and remember the verse said, etmol shil shom, the verse said yesterday and the day before. If 3 people on 3 days give evidence that this ox is a danger, then it's a danger from a point of view of damages. Echad tam echad muad. So one is harmless and the other is known to be dangerous. So of course, the balance of damages could go either way. The excess of damages could go either way. So maybe, for example, the dangerous ox incurred greater damage to the harmless ox. So it's the owner of the dangerous ox to pay. Mu'ad batam mishalem bamotar nezek shalem. As far as the excess damage of the known to the harmless is concerned, that's full damages. He pays full damages. Vitam bamuad. What about the excess damage of the harmless to the known? Well, maybe the harmless ox actually created more damage. Maybe he's a bigger ox, for example. Or maybe the other one fell in an unfortunate way. If the harmless ox has created more damage, vitam bamuad, mishalem bamutar chatzi nezek. The excess of the harmless to the known is paid by half damages. So the principle of whole and half applies, but we're applying it to the difference. Or at least this is the way the Rosh, by the way, reads this. The Rambam, Maimonides, would read it a different way. He would just say, look, that we don't net. The damage caused by the known danger is paid in full. The damage caused by the harmless ox is paid in half. So effectively, even if both oxen are of equivalent value, the one with the ox that is known to be dangerous ends up paying a lot more. That's the Rambam. But we've explained this according to the Rosh. And the Mishnah continues. And similarly, if 2 men hurt one another, one pays full damages for the excess. So if they hurt each other, then it's the hurt difference that is payable. And the 2 men here, but remember we've said a man is always, or a woman, a person is always responsible for their actions. We've already learned that men and women are treated equally in the law of damages. A person is always responsible for their actions. So they're both considered muad, they're both considered dangerous. So the excess will be paid in full by the person who suffered the least damage to the person that suffered the most damage. Let's keep going, because we can carry on. We can carry on playing with these combinations. And the Mishnah, by the way, is going to exhaustively go through these combinations. Maybe we're setting up the following Mishnayot, which will meditate on the ox at quite some length. But this concept of known and unknown is really critical in the Mishnah's view of damages. Comes straight from the verse. So maybe it's natural that the Mishnah is going to go through these options in exhaustive detail. So we've had the 2 oxen, we've had the 2 people. Now, Adam ba'muad umuad ba'adam, a man and a known ox. That is an ox known to be dangerous. So a man crashes into an ox known to be dangerous. Umuad ba'adam, or an ox known to be dangerous crashes into a man. Mishalem ba'mutar nezek shalem. One pays full damages for the excess. In other words, whoever creates the most damage, whoever creates the most damage pays. They pay in full net of the damage they suffered. What about a person and a harmless ox? This is a bit like, I suppose, a person crashes into an ox that's considered harmless. Adam batam, vitam ba'adam. A man and a harmless ox. Now, remember, we said a man is always muad, a person. Adam is a person. A person is always known. So this is a bit like the known ox and the harmless ox. If you can compare person to a known ox. Well, a person is muad. Adam batam vitam ba'adam. A man and a harmless ox hurt one another. And we're going to follow the same pattern, actually. Adam batam mishalem ba'mutar nezek shalem. So if the person injured the harmless ox by more than the value of the injury that he himself received, he's going to pay full damages for the excess. But if the harmless ox did more damage, it's going to pay the excess damage only half. It's going to pay half damages on the excess because the other half is borne by the person himself. And at this point, Rabbi Akiva is going to disagree. Rabbi Akiva omer af tam shechaval ba'adam shalem ba'mutar nezek shalem. Rabbi Akiva says even a harmless ox that injures a person, mishalem ba'mutar nezek shalem, full damages are paid for the person that suffered the greater hurt. It's really interesting. Rabbi Akiva seems to want to break this pattern, and he's making a drush actually out of the following verse. We learned the first verses, the v'chigov shor et ishraehu, when a man's ox injures his neighbor's ox, and the whole concept of full and half damages. But the next verse goes on to say, oven yigach or vat yigach. So too, if it injures a child, whether it's a male child or a female child, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule, he being the ox. Like this rule. And of course, we have an antecedent of this. We got the antecedent of this, like this rule. We don't really know what this rule is. The text is not clear, but Rabbi Akiva will learn it out. Rabbi Akiva will learn it out on the ox, which is known to be a danger. And so he'll say, look, if an ox gores a person, whether it's known or unknown, it's going to be dealt with according to the same rule, i.e., full damages.